Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It looks like a yes.
Live
Okay, here
now.
we
Yeah.
are. We are live streaming on LinkedIn. It is Thursday. It is 11 a.m. It is QT Conversations. It is Qualified Tutors' answer to the podcast. It's also our answer to research, because really what we're doing here is exploring how we as tutors do things. It's highly practical, it's highly honest, it's sometimes very vulnerable, and it's always helpful in pushing our thinking forward. Emma, who is in the room but multitasking, or doing other things and listening to us, let's say, said in an interview that she did for us recently that the QT conversations are invaluable, which really made me smile, Emma, because sometimes I feel like, we're just sort of blumbling along. But I think that we have this tendency to forget that learning is not linear, and actually blumbling along is sometimes exactly where the
Yeah.
progress. So Michael was just saying before we started recording this session that Michael was saying just before we started recording this session that a more co-created,
Yeah.
student-led approach to a learning journey could be
Mm.
really interesting. And I think that that's sort of the approach that we take here, don't we? So the topic that we wanted to discuss today, which came up in our conversation last week, was about what do we charge? And of course, I wanted to sort of make it a little bit more nuanced than that. So the question here is, what is your value and what do you charge? And I think it's quite helpful to separate out those two things, because frankly, I couldn't afford Dee if she charged me her value. But because your value is limitless, right? But I think it's a really interesting thing to unpack, because we know that as educators, we are not used to setting our own rates. We are used to working up a pay scale. We know that as values-led people, we feel uncomfortable pricing people out. So if not every student can have access to us, then we feel bad about that. We know that as freelancers, we are under pressure to pay our own wages. We know that as business leaders, we feel a responsibility to pay the wages of our teaching staff. So Michael and Emma are both employing other tutors, and they have a responsibility to make sure the tutor's getting a fair wage, make sure that the parents can afford what they're charging, and make sure that they get a fair cut for themselves that makes the whole project worthwhile. We are not running charities. That would be a lovely conversation that we're not having today. We're having a conversation where we talk about how we can create successful, sustainable pricing rates that feel fair for everyone. Michael, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So, in terms of our Charterhouse Online tutors, this is not me specifically. This is as a business owner, not the owner, but leading the business. We recognise that there's a lot of work that goes around the actual live contact hour with students. There's so much planning that is required. There's the feedback, which often happens after the lesson. Sometimes there's communication that goes on. Let's say it's happening once a week, the tutoring lesson. There's a lot of toing and froing communication. These aren't paid for parts. So we actually give our tutors £60 for an hour lesson. We have
Blimey,
yeah,
firstly.
yeah,
Blimey.
yeah. And this is the one-to-one tutoring blocks. So it's personalized. We are a high-end service, and our tutors recognize that, and they are willing to satisfy the high expectations of the students. Um, but that is for a one-to-one tuition arrangement. Actually, for our boost courses that we have, our revision courses, which are class-like situations up to 12 in the class, we actually give more than that as well. We recommend
Well, you can't give less for
no,
running a group. That
no,
wouldn't make sense, but go ahead.
but
But
there's also the aspect of um, they may not have students in that class as well. So we kind of we say yeah, we want you to commit to this week. Kind of block out that week. We expect there'll be 10 hours of teaching available during that course of that week. Um, and so, but there's the risk that we may not get any students. We don't have any registrants, and so that's the kind of gamble we have. We give a slightly higher rate to facilitate the risk of not having any work at all.
wow,
Yeah.
that's
So
rather scary.
yeah.
But of course, it means that the right tutors have been ring fenced,
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
made available for when you need them.
Yeah.
Um, presumably the seasonal nature of tutoring is what you're factoring in there when you know that sometimes there's going to be an influx and sometimes it's going to be quiet, but you need the tutor to be available, otherwise you can't run the hour.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. And that you said something quite slightly juicy before. You said these tutors are willing to undertake the high expectations of the student.
Yeah.
Really interesting in terms of the power dynamic that you've just hinted to.
Mm.
Want to unpick that for me a little bit?
I guess the students we're getting are aiming for top universities, the highest grades, and I guess there is a there's an unstated expectation, I suppose, that the tutor can really provide the best opportunities to get those highest grades. Really, so there's a nuanced understanding of the subject content. We only employ tutors who have qualified teacher status and at least 2 or 3 years experience
You
afterwards.
know my opinion on that.
I
We'll do
know,
that another day.
it's something we say, it's a kind of quality guarantee. I know there's fabulous tutors that I don't have QTS and sometimes even arguably better, but it's some sort of safety net, I think, that our parents have, and um, and as I said before, there are lots of experience beyond that as well. So we know we've got tutors who know the topics really well, and that gives the parents and the students a lot of security.
Yeah, there's a few things there, isn't there? Because on the one hand, there's status, the realities and the perceptions of it, and on the other hand, there's the reality of can you help this child to get the top grade?
Yeah, yeah.
And if that's the ambition of the child, then that's the tutor that you need to be for them. And we know that there are so many tutors who are better suited to alternative provision or send support, and there's other tutors who do tend to command a higher rate, which is interesting,
Hmm.
for those premier sort of prestigious um, unlocking of doors. It's a little bit what I
Mm,
talk about in my book about the gatekeeper tutors.
mm,
You know, if you work with me, then you will have access to your dreams. I will unlock doors for you. And I think
mm,
that's it's complex, it's loaded, and it will be interesting to see, Michael, how that develops for you and whether it becomes something that doesn't feel old fashioned and stuffy, but actually
sure,
feels worthwhile. Is that
sure.
true?
Yeah, no, there's make really good points there. I mean, I think we that's the model we've kind of set up with really, and there's all sorts of we know our marketing, we know our niche in the market, and we're trying to satisfy that niche. We do recognize that the evidence shows that personalized learning is the most successful, but I do think there's different pedagogical strategies with personalized learning. I do think the onset of AI, actually, there's all sorts of tools that I think some of our tutors may not be using, and that could be shortchanging some of our students. I do think there needs to be we need to be vigilant that we're not being old fashioned, and vigilant that we're not behind some of the latest trends and latest
Yeah,
strategies. So that's a pain point that we're trying to address.
that's interesting. I didn't realize that that's what I was pointing to there, and I'm so happy to be able to explore that with you. I'm going to call on Dee now, and Emma, when you're ready, will you just give me a thumbs up so I know that I can call on you as well? Michael, thank you for teeing us off. That was super. Dee, go ahead.
All sorts of stuff churning in my head. When I started full-time tutoring, it was to kind of just tick me along, and I didn't think about my value per se, and what I wasn't looking at I just needed to bring in a bit of money, and I charged what I felt was affordable, and it was as vague as that. Um, and based on what I had been charging in the past, and I didn't really know what the going rate was. I didn't really do my homework in that sense on reflecting on it. And then my experiences with QT, with support from other people, means that I have taken steps to increase my rates. I'm still being told that I'm not charging enough by other tutors telling me I'm not charging enough.
We want to know what you're charging.
So currently I am charging £42 an hour.
Okay.
Although I took on a new student, and they are being charged my new rate, which is £45 an hour.
Wow.
And the
Remind
reason
me,
that
what is Douglas Adams' meaning of life number? 42.
42.
Yes. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I was charging 40. I didn't want to put it up to 45.
Yeah.
So it went up to 42. And when it went up the last time, which was the September before last, AI helped me write an email which allowed parents to they have to pay a minimum of a half term in advance.
Yes.
AI suggested offering the option to pay for more than one half term in advance, which would lock in the old rate.
Brilliant.
And that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do again.
So let's just unpack that slightly. So we started off with vague, and I didn't do my homework, right? And that's sort of that, I remember that stage, that sort of I'm just gonna have a go. And that's awesome, especially as an independent tutor. Also, I don't know whether I'm going to do this well enough, so I don't want to over egg things. And then it's that inching up. I think what really piqued my curiosity and what you just said was that you asked AI to help you with that letter. Do you want to explain why you asked AI to help you with that letter?
Well, I knew what I wanted. I kind of knew what I wanted to say, but I always work best from a non-blank piece of paper when I'm a bit stuck
But
for
I
ideas.
think there's something else, which is it can be difficult to communicate this message because you're anticipating
totally.
Right.
Totally. I knew it needed to be done.
Yeah.
It had to be addressed, and getting someone else to help was reducing the pain of doing it.
I think so. I think that, you can rely on the AI to be sort of diplomatic in that way, in a way that, we've seen lots of our members go through this journey, and some of them come across really defensive initially, or even passive aggressive, and they don't mean it. It's just that they're trying to communicate their value, and it comes across as if they're saying that they weren't being valued. But
and AI also included reasons why I'm doing good stuff, and pointing out what it is that I'm doing, which doesn't come automatically to me because I just do it.
I was thinking about
it pointed out the obvious.
My special guests just arrived. So Jenna, I'm going to hand over to you. Dee, will you support her? I just have to go and get the door.
Absolutely.
Hello, I will briefly put, if it's working, my camera. Apologies for the delay and the chaos. We've had no power this morning and I'm about to leave for London.
Again?
Yeah, I've got my hospital today. I've got
No, I meant the power.
Oh, the power. Yeah, they've turned the power off it was planned. We got a day's or so notice to fix whatever it was they broke the other day that gave us the power cut. So hey ho. So apologies for the chaos, and apologies for the fact that I'm therefore on 4G. So the question was about rates, was that right?
The question is about what's your value and what do you charge?
So my value and how much I charge has changed. And they don't always line up because of how I measure value and how I do my pricing scale. So 5 or so years ago, when I was still in London, my rates were a lot higher than they are now.
Location.
Yeah. Well, location and realizing what I wanted to do, where I'm best at, kind of just making a bit more.
So wait, I just want to pull on that thread for a second. When you moved out of London, your living costs reduced, and therefore you were able to charge less and do the work that you were particularly wanting to do. Is that what you're saying?
Nope. My
Okay.
living costs went way up.
Your living costs are way up.
A lot of things. Yeah. So I left. I was charging an average of about 250 quid an hour. My highest paying client at that point was about £1,000 an hour. But I've had higher and I had lower. And at the time I did have a few clients that were a decent bit lower. When I left London, I still had London clients and I was still traveling down 3 or 4 days a week to London. But I was still doing a lot of traveling. So I had a client in Barcelona, I had clients in Cornwall, I was traveling all over. And I left London to retire. So I was also at that point, I just left. I was CEO of a charity based in London, and so I left London to retire to look after my health. And I took a little break from everything. I left work. I largely left politics as well because I was flying all over for politics. Because I represented the UK to one of the Commonwealth heads of government councils and things like that, and I was very involved in politics. So I left a lot of that behind to take a break to look after my health. And in retirement, I was like, I can't do nothing. I love tutoring. Let's do a little bit of that again. And I was working at local boarding school part-time as well. And I had lowered my rates initially because I just wanted to do it for some fun. I wanted to work without the pressure with a different kind of client that I wouldn't have normally necessarily worked with. And because I didn't really have that many word of mouth clients up here, all of my word of mouth clients were largely in London and in communities that were largely London based or London centric. So I was starting from scratch and it was really, really interesting. I didn't know anyone up here apart from my partner, and that made a huge difference. And when I realized that I was tutoring more than I had been working when I retired, I was like, I've got to do this a bit more properly. So I set up as a limited company and made that transition to actually, and I spent a lot of time doing some introspection and life planning for what I wanted my life to look like, what I enjoyed, what gave me that spark of joy and all of that, and where my strengths laid, and to kind of explore what I wanted to learn.
So interesting, Jenna, that journey about going from £1,000. You've gone glitchy. And I spoke over you.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. So that journey of going from charging £1,000.
Sorry.
Okay, don't worry. That journey of going from charging £1,000 an hour to the introspection of, I need to find the joy in this again and find a way that I want to work is fascinating because it's almost backward. You would have thought that the story went, I found my joy and then I was able to charge £1,000 an hour. And the fact that it's not that is exactly who we are here and feels really, really interesting. And the fact that all of that introspection and that focus on learning that's been the result of that journey feels really interesting. I think also that point that you said that I didn't know anyone up here, I didn't have a social network to pull on, is also really relevant, which makes me want to call on Emma next, because Emma's very much about the local. Emma, are you available? Emma's been tidying her dad's house this morning. But she was in the car. Okay, you'll come when you're ready. So, Jenna, let me just find out from you before you disappear again. I know that you're juggling this morning and about to drive down to London. What are you available for the rest of this conversation, or should I gobble up now? Oh yeah, you're with us. Okay, great.
I'll be here. If I do have to not be actively participating, I will message in the
chat. Thanks, love. Thank you. Emma. I had a beautiful segue there from Jenna to you about working locally and using your local networks. And I know that you've got all your mum's friends cheerleading you on Facebook and all of that. So would you give us the sort of that overview of the question of what is your value and what do you charge, the difference between those two things, and then how you extrapolate that for the tutors that you work with? That must be really complex.
It is. And I think what came to mind when Michael was talking was it's not just about how we value ourselves, it's about how society values us as well and how our clients value us. I could never get away with charging what Michael's charging because my ideal client would never pay it.
Well, to be fair, Michael didn't tell us what he's charging. He only told us what he's paying his students, his tutors. And you work backwards from there.
Signal.
Detective.
Well, put it this way. I'm not even charging what Michael's paying his tutors.
Nice.
So, like, there is no way that just wouldn't happen. And those ideal clients, it's really hard because you go and you compare it to like a plumber or a beautician and people will pay.
Emma, your Wi-Fi is letting you down. Jenna, Michael pays one-to-one tutors roughly £60 an hour and more, of course, for group work. And sometimes the groups are empty, but he needs to pay the hour because he needs to keep the space open. That was weird. Emma disappeared and Jenna appeared, and it was like you guys just changed heads for a second there. So Emma was saying loads of juicy stuff. Should we introduce? Okay, hold on. I'll give you that at the end. She's coming back. It's fine. You're worth waiting for. Don't worry. You go ahead.
Sorry. Now on the laptop, so it should be fine. Yeah. What I was saying was, like, my ideal client won't pay. Like, even now with the prices I'm charging, they're like, oh, that's a lot of money. But when you compare other industries, so take, for example, beauty and wellness and then trades like plumbers and whatever, people are like, well, yeah, that's just what they charge. But when it comes to education, people question it. Like, we should be giving the service away for free. And it's a bugbear of mine because the value that we provide, getting back to the question, we change lives. We literally change lives. We give opportunities to students that without us they wouldn't have. That's priceless. And yet people still quibble over £40 an hour or £30 an hour. Like, even when I started out and was charging £25 an hour, people questioned it and you're like, but I'm unlocking doors.
It's so healthy what you're saying. I was talking with one of our new members this week, who has just taken on her first student. And she is nervous. She's very, very capable. She has an MA in her subject. She's completely personable and lovely. And it's a family friend. And she's charging him £15 an hour. And I said, and first I ascertained that she'd actually said that number and it was booked in. And yes, it is. I said to her, you can't charge less than 25 because he won't show up, because it won't feel serious. The agreement won't feel serious on both sides if you don't communicate your value. And I'm not arguing for being unaffordable. And if it was unaffordable, then it's a different conversation. It's a conversation about funding or about, pro bono or something else. But she thought that she was taking the pressure off herself by charging 15. And what I wanted her to understand was that actually she was making the relationship more complex by not charging enough to set herself up properly. Jenna, go on.
Do you want to know how I ended up charging £1,000 an hour?
Deeply. I was trying not to be too crass, but we all wanted to know.
So for anyone who doesn't know, I don't have a degree. I don't have QTS, but I have a lot of alternative qualifications and a lot of experience and specialism. And I, to an extent, grew up in the right place with the right people, and that made a difference. But what happened was that I started tutoring by word of mouth in the first place for money professionally, that's the word. And I had put my prices up on one of my tutoring profiles at one point, and just kind of blanket said, okay, I have got kind of at capacity to be able to juggle everything else that I'm doing. I'm just gonna, I don't want to close my profile, I don't want to lock my profile, but I'm gonna put my prices up to a little bit of an extortionate amount of
Called a
money.
go away price.
Yeah. And then I was still getting too many inquiries, so I upped it and I kept upping it. And it was through word of mouth as well. So when I'd get a verbal inquiry, or if I'd have someone ask, oh, how much are you currently charging, or whatever, for the most part, I had always kind of done, well, what would you like to pay? And to an extent, I kind of still do that. But I have a structure in place to work that out now. But it's part of my marketing now, whereas before it was kind of like, I'm terrified of asking about money. And I got to the point where people were like, oh, well, all right, fine, we really want you. You're saying you don't have much availability. We'll just stick an extra zero, or we'll just double it, or we'll do this extra thing for you, or whatever.
Throw money into it.
Especially especially after they could see the effect that I'd had. They could see what I was like and the results that I got.
Well, that's important. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't really a website story. It was really a track record story.
Yeah, and I think it was that combination, because I was having like cold contacts, people seeing my listing on my profile and going, oh, well, we'll get in contact with you. Anyway, and it was really, really interesting, and I think that it broke something in me, because it was so absurd at various points. Like I have had clients that are more than a grand, and in value, in terms of like, sometimes clients will pay a price and then also provide the transport or whatever it is on top. And I think that it made me realize, and I did some experimenting when I moved up here with pricing. I was like, I'm going to for science this, and that difference in price bracket from that 30 to 40 range to as soon as you jump to above,
yes,
it used to be above 50, but now it's above 60. 60
yes,
tends to be my baseline,
yes,
because the kinds of clients that do pay that are the same clients I was working with, but they don't give me the runaround. They don't flake on me as much. They just put a little bit more effort into it, even though they're the same clients. And I do then offer things to make that sustainable for everyone. And that's kind of my line, is that education in every regard should be sustainable. It should be engaging. It should be positive. And yes, there are going to be times where it's hard in all regards, and that comes to financially, but you can do a subscription model. You can have feel like it's more than that. You can have that extra kind of there's a lot of stuff in the business world and the marketing world, a lot of buzzwords that give your, I can't remember what all of the words are right now, but it's about giving your client that customer journey that feels personal, that feels like they know what they're getting for their money, and that's where that difference happens often.
And I love what you're talking about, sustainability there, and the way Emma's resonating with you, because that, Emma, is the way you set up your business, is to create that wraparound customer experience that means that it's much more than the hour. Dia, I want to come back to what you were saying before about how ChatGPT suggested that you allow parents to pay blocks in advance. So I, as a mum who employs qualified tutor members currently, more than one, was really, really grateful for those offers when the tutors that I was working with needed to put their prices up. I was really grateful to be able to pay in advance and secure that price. Also, because I struggled to keep track of these things, I was grateful to pay in advance because it made my life less stressful. And I'd love to share with you that I once worked with a tutor who had the most, I worked with her as a teacher. She was the absolute best. I completely trusted her. I gave her one of my most vulnerable little people at his most vulnerable time. And she charged me £75 an hour, which was gulp. It really was. It was way more than was sensible to spend. And then I needed to stop for cash flow reasons, and she wouldn't let me out before the end of the term. And she lost so much trust with me in that moment. And she's a good person. And she didn't realize what the business decision was going to do to the, but I don't recommend her anymore because I don't want anybody to feel trapped in that way. And so what you're saying, Jenna, about, education feeling joyful feels really, really important there. And I think it's important to always remember the parent in all of this, not just the affordability, but also their experience. I wanted to pull back on what Michael and Emma was saying about the prestige and the power balance and not power balance, sorry, I wanted to drop that bit. I wanted to think about how the parents value the education and therefore what? Not necessarily therefore the investment, because if they don't have it, that's not. So, Michael, do you want to speak about the parents valuing the education and therefore?
Yeah, that's something else I was going to mention as well, linked to that, I guess. It was what Emma was talking about before. It's just the perception of education a little bit, I think, again, talking about when I was working in China, Chinese parents value education so much and they will pay so much more. The baseline is, I mean, I was making up numbers really. I don't have the data, but happily spending 80, £100 an hour in China, even though their income is significantly less. It's just the proportion of their household income, they're happy to commit so much more to education because they believe in it, in unlocking doors and providing opportunities in the future. And so I do wonder whether, it just feels much more unequal, the prestige that various families put on education. When Emma was comparing it to other sectors, not criticizing other sectors whatsoever, but actually education is extremely important and, surely one of the most important ways of spending an hour you can possibly have.
And if you think about the hours that we spend to be in a position to deliver education,
exactly,
the time and the money that we've invested and the equivalence in, the beauty world, it's a crazy thing to make that comparison. Emma,
Sure.
do you want to get involved there?
I'm not sure I should. I think it's just, and every family is going to choose what they spend their money on. But the last time I went for a massage, it was £80 for like 50 minutes. And when you compare that to what you get from a tuition session for 50 minutes, like that can last a lifetime. Those light bulb moments, that building that confidence, like it's not just about the results. And we talk about this a lot, don't we, Julia? It's not about necessarily the results, but the change for that child and what that can unlock in them. Like to then say, well, it's not worth £80.
I actually love the example of a massage because I always wonder, like, by the time I've got home, the massage is worn off. Do you know what I mean? Like a holiday, yeah. By the time you've unpacked, it's done. So, and whereas learning, we know, is going deep and making change, but the change is less visible, which is what we're always attacking here, this making the learning visible. I think massage is such an interesting comparison. Right. Do you want to meet my special guest?
Sure.
No, I need more enthusiasm.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, QT members, this is Andy. Andy and I are working together on the postgraduate certificate in education. I cannot currently tell you which university he's working with, but I will too soon. I am hoping that these people and the people watching and listening will be participating in this postgraduate because it will feel relevant, exciting, helpful, and actually be part of pioneering in this space. But Andy, you've taken notes.
I have taken some notes.
So come on,
it's been
over
very
to you.
interesting. First of all, thank you for letting me intrude, because I do feel as if I've intruded
That's
almost,
not a thing.
but it is. But at the same time,
Look at the face.
yeah, I can see. This is extremely valuable for me. I'm new to the world of tutoring. I'm very experienced in the world of teaching. I've been teaching for just over 35 years in one form or another. And I won't give my surname and I won't give where I'm working because that sort of gives away some sort of trade secrets at the moment, and until things are sort of firmed and finalised, approved and things like that. But one of the things that I'm tasked with doing is putting together with Julia this postgraduate certificate in professional tutoring. And that's the phrase we came up with virtually from the start, wasn't it? I got the the idea of it's that professionalism that you're talking about this morning as well, the business models, everything that goes into it. And what you've been talking about, I've been listening to this morning, has been enlightening, because it's going to help me to work with Julia and shape the course to fit not only the academic level that we are looking for, but also the actual business needs, that your own personal needs, and trying to tailor it to the market, basically. There's no good us developing a postgraduate certificate that looks all very good and fancy, but actually doesn't do the job, which is help you on the academic understanding, but also help you with your businesses. And hearing some of those things about sustainability of the education model, the what it is you're all about, which is the impact on tutees, not just results, is really good. From my point of view, one of the things that when tutoring is mentioned, because I come from a primary school background, tutoring is all about the disadvantage gap. It's what we're always hearing. And so hearing your examples this morning and some that Julia has already shared with me, stories she shared with me, it just makes me open my eyes to what tutoring is. And yes, it is addressing the disadvantage gap for some. And it is it's very personalized. As one or two of you have spoken about, it's very tailored to the client, the tutee, the family, whoever you're working with. So thank you very much for letting me listen in on these things. And I hope to jump onto some more calls in the future, because I think it's going to help me to understand how to put the sessions together.
Brilliant. Dee, do you have anything you want to contribute? I'm going to go around the room.
I'm even more excited about the level 7, and if I wasn't already, I didn't already have a PGCE and all the rest of it, I want to do it.
What do you mean? You need to do it even with a PGCE.
I mean, I'm always up for, developing my knowledge, but also reminding myself of stuff that I probably know, but possibly I've forgotten about. So yeah, I'm so excited about this, and the message that it's going to give to the whole world, not just the education sector, but the whole world, that tutor. I mean, the whole COVID lockdown thing has brought tutoring into much sharper focus. Right. Qualified tutors has brought everything into sharper focus, and equipping people to do what we do, I think, is just joyous. So I'm so excited about all of this.
Thanks,
thank you, Andy, and Julia for what you're doing, and just can't wait for that announcement when we know what's going on.
Michael, go ahead, you.
Yeah, likewise, nice to have that introduction. Really, I'd like to hear more about this qualification. We want to make sure we provide a good service, and I do feel quality control is something that's certainly one of our pain points at the moment. We kind of guaranteeing good quality. We need to ensure that's happening, and any opportunities for our staff to develop in that, we're interested.
That's fantastic. Michael, at the beginning of our chat today, you were saying that you only employ qualified teachers, and that's just a sort of a quality assurance piece to reassure parents. My goal, and I was talking about this with another online school leader recently, my goal is for the PGPT to sit alongside the PGCE, so that you can have either.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the bottom line is it's a quality guarantee, isn't it? So I guess if that's enabled, and I'm obviously, I know you're in talks about how it's going to look, etc. But I'm super interested to see how it will develop. And I said that.
Just reassure me that Zoom is managing to drown out that drilling. Yeah, drilling. You can hear the drilling. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
I mean, literally, it's so loud.
It's the Zoom is I can hear the difference in the sound. So Zoom is doing it's struggling, but it's doing a great job.
Very nice. Emma, any thoughts, reflections, questions, insights?
I am equally excited about the level 7. I'm glad to hear that it will include some business stuff as well. because anyone that's come out of teaching, that, as Julia knows, I'm really passionate about. That's the biggest thing for tutors, is struggling with the business side of things, and it's something that I now help other business owners with. So yeah, to hear that that's going to be included as well as the tutoring side of things is really good. And yeah, I'm just excited to see how it evolves.
That's awesome. Andy and I've been just sort of exploring the different routes in and through, and how an undergrad who either is in an education degree at the moment or is in psychology and looking to go into education but doesn't want to manage a classroom can go into this course and come out at least knowing what they don't know in terms of the business side of things. So checklists, resources, guidance, structures to help them have their ducks in a row before they get started, and then know what questions to continue to ask themselves.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Jenna, thoughts, insights, questions?
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. I am really excited by the level 7, and I'm really intrigued to see how it pans out. I mean, we've had lots of conversations about how a lot of tutors, regardless of whether we were QTS or not, don't teach in classrooms for reasons. And so having a qualification that genuinely doesn't feel like it's geared to school-based people or schools or teachers will be really good. And I'm really intrigued to see how that pans out, and to kind of get that what's the word, not prestige, but you know, that recognition of quality, of reliability, of the fact that we know our shit in kind of a really formal way. I think will be really cool to see how it develops and how it might, like, it has potential to really shape the industry, and where we go from here. And I think that, yeah, it's really cool. And I think that it really does tie into all of the conversations that we have about that difference between tutoring and teaching and kind of all of those veins.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, Jenna, I'm reflecting on the fact that we are the only people who could create this course.
Yeah.
You know, there's nobody who does this thinking at this level but us. And you know, Michael started off by talking about co-creation, and certainly Andy, in our first planning session last week, you saw how fun that was. But you know, it's definitely not just me and Andy making it. It's not just Odette and Sue behind the scenes. This is the community making the course that the community believes in. And that's a lot more place. It really does. How much easier would it be to go off into a room, shut the door, and write what we fancy? But doing it this way is going to be so much more interesting. So thank you so much for being on the journey with us. Right, I think he's earned a cup of tea. I have as well.
Sat here.
So my lovelies, thank you so much for being here today. Jenna, I hope to see you later on this afternoon.
Fingers crossed.
Great. Do you send us lots of birthday cake photos, please?
Cake? What's cake?
Michael, send me some sunshine.
Lots of sunshine here. Yes.
And
Yeah.
Emma, lots of loves to you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.